Welcome to Just Go Grind, a show that focuses on helping you launch and grow a business and navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Justin Gordon, and in this episode, we have Eytan Bensoussan, co-founder and CEO of NorthOne, business banking built for America. They're trusted by over 190,000 businesses across America, and they make the hardest parts of running your business much, much easier. In this episode, we go through Eytan's story and how he created this company, the first things he did to start NorthOne, and what he learned from about 100 customer interviews in the early days, how he decided on which potential customers to talk to, which is an important part of this growth process for his company, the hoops you have to jump through in starting a business bank, and some of the unscalable things he did in the early days to get exposure for NorthOne, how they raised their Series A and his approach to fundraising, the impact COVID had on NorthOne and how they adapted to that, his favorite book, and much more. As always, these show notes are at justgogrind.com/podcast, and you can support the show by leaving a rating and review over in Apple Podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Hawk Media, a full-service outsourced CMO based in Santa Monica, California, providing guidance, planning, and execution to grow brands of all sizes, industries, and business models. Hawk Media is recognized by Inc. as one of the fastest-growing marketing consultancies, and their collaborative process, a la carte offering, and month-to-month fee structure give clients the flexibility they need to boost digital revenues and marketing ROI. Hawk Media, the company, has serviced over 1,500 brands of all sizes, ranging from startups like Tomorrow Melon, SIO Beauty, and Bottle Keeper to household names like Red Bull, Verizon Wireless, and Alibaba. And also, I had the founder and CEO of Hawk Media, Eric Huberman, on the podcast in episode number 23, if you want to take a listen. And to get a free consultation, head on over to hawkmedia.com and be sure to mention Just Go Grind. Without further ado, here is Eytan Bensoussan, co-founder and CEO of NorthOne. Eytan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. Nice to be here.
Yes, appreciate you taking the time to come on. And for people who aren't familiar, can you give us a little bit of overview of what NorthOne is? What are you guys doing?
Yeah. NorthOne is a small business-focused challenger bank, it's called, that serves small businesses across America. And what we are at the very core is a fully operational bank account and banking platform that small businesses can access and do essentially anything they would with a normal bank, but from their phone or their desktop anywhere in America. The place where it gets really magical for us is that we don't stop there. That's actually our starting point. We actually take that relationship and we start building in the finance department for many small businesses, helping them close the month, helping them better manage lots of the transaction data that they use. We don't go and replace accountants or anything. We actually help them do their job faster and quicker.
With that as well, understanding this, I mean, it seems so clear now. It's like this digital banking and how everything goes with that in terms of small businesses really needing that, obviously. But take me through when you got started. Why did you decide to start this in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, it's so connected just to the arc of my life. I grew up in a family of small business owners. Much of the great life that I had as a kid was due to both sides of the family having built something out of nothing through small business, and so it was always clear to me that this was such an incredible lever. Looking back on things like reducing income inequality, access to finance, social mobility, etc. But as a kid, this life had one important cost to it, which was small business owners usually were people who had a craft or a trade that they had commercialized. And then instead of spending more time on doing the thing that they were really good at, they actually became extremely focused and almost paralyzed often by the financial management of the company, something that they pretty much had never been trained for. And that problem, this idea of the owner being mired in back office work rather than selling or building or whatever it is that they do really well, it carries through today. And I got to spend some incredible time in the last decade really looking at what was happening in Europe. I was working for a company called McKinsey, which allowed me to kind of really suss out what was this crazy thing called fintech that was coming out of Europe. What could we learn about the North American market? And my jaw just dropped when I got there. I saw people just redefining the purpose of banking, the purpose of financial services, delivering it in new ways. And then all of a sudden, I had this moment where I started saying, well, what if the bank, when it came to small businesses, actually thought about what all this information was going to be used for. What if they actually realized every small business is closing their books? Every small business is writing like the 10 same reports. Instead of just, dumping ledger data on the business saying, good luck, see you next time. What if you actually got it 80% of the way there? And allow that small business and their bookkeeper, their accountant, if they have one, to just finish the last mile. But what you'll have done is you'll just reduce the risk of error, reduce the cost and the anxiety that lives with these business owners. And that's where this idea for NorthOne came. And I became so obsessed with it, like literally obsessed with this idea. I ended up quitting my job and said, like, I have to go figure this thing out. I didn't know what it looked like, but I knew that this problem was something that I wanted to dive into head first.
With that too, like on that exact point of quitting your job to do this, some people work on things on the side, some people go all in much sooner. For you, take me through that decision process in deciding to take the
Yeah.
leap.
Yeah, I'm not, there's so many ways you get into this. I am not a side gig kind of person. I either give like 190% or I don't give. I can't really, I've never really figured out how to dial it down. And so for me, it almost was like I couldn't think of anything else. It was just so obvious. I kept on thinking of my childhood. I kept on thinking of my friends who are building businesses and saying like, this is the problem of my generation. I was seeing, we're getting poorer and poorer compared to, so many generations before us, which have become wealthier. And I said like, this is because it is so hard for small businesses to be successful. Like I have to devote everything to this. And I started realizing that my current job was only going to let me be a bystander, maybe an advisor to this, and I'd always be wanting or regretting that I'm not actually getting in the game. Like, you're sitting on the whole time on the bench and not actually getting the ball and, and driving down the court.
Yeah.
And I just said, like I couldn't stomach not having at least tried, right? Like at least Rudy in the movie gets at the last minute to go and like play a little. I was like, shame on me if I'm so passionate about this and all it was a bunch of hype in my mind. I was fortunate that my life circumstances allowed me to do this. I at the moment at that point I didn't have a family yet. Still single when I was or getting ready to move to that next step of life. But I had this moment where I said like, this is the time I can go jump in right now. Maybe that window closes in a few years, so I'm gonna grab it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's that it goes back to the idea of just like self awareness and understanding what it is you want and how you operate best as an entrepreneur to know to even take that leap. And then kind of the position you're in life as well allows you to do that. To that point, though, when you did do that, when you actually took the leap and you jumped in, what were some of those first things you were doing to figure this out and make this into an actual company?
So before I even had a name for the company, um, I had probably interviewed upwards of 100 small business owners across North America. Because my to me, the single most important thing I had to reconnect to was that world, right? I had this DNA of growing up in a small business, but that was like decades ago, and I needed to understand how the world had changed. And so I just interviewed reams of business owners, and the raw reaction I got from them was the energy to get me to the next level. I mean, you'd have business owners, 40, 50, 60 years old, break down into tears when I would ask them about what does it feel like to go through end of the month or, tax time, because of the anxiety they had that they might get something wrong and they can't afford an accountant. And, you get it wrong once, you kind of get it wrong forever. The business shuts down and that's generational wealth that disappears. Um, and so it was only after, close to 100 of these interviews that I started taking a step back and saying, so what is the actual solution to this? And, I was not anchored on better banking at that point. I thought there was many ways that you can solve it. But when I was, taking an objective step away from it, I said, the problem with all these people is that they have lots of tools. They're not talking to each other. They're all focused in the same area, which is, the back office of their business, and their banking relationship causes them a massive amount of pain. We got to build a better bank for these folks.
Yeah.
And I was actually like upset with that conclusion. I was like, no, this is crazy. Like, that's not where this should lead me. Like, there's got to be a more, an easier to digest solution. And no matter how I try to like weasel my way out of that particular conclusion, it kept on coming back. I said, like, this is it. There's got to be a bank built for small businesses, not one that kind of accidentally serves them because they have to, they're going to serve everybody in their community. One that is 24 hours a day thinking about the needs of this particular small business community, and is designed deliberately for their needs. And when that was just so obvious to me, I said, okay, like, I'm not going to shake it. Like, this is it. We're going to do this. And then it was a whole other set of questions I had, but that gave me that ability to have confidence in the objective that I had set out.
And on that, I just want to dive a little bit deeper on that because I think this is an important part of obviously launching any business is that customer discovery process. What were some of those questions you were asking, and how did you decide on what small businesses you were going to talk to?
Yeah, that's actually that was a really important moment for me. So I didn't want to have all of the same people talking to me, right? First, I needed to make sure that I was talking to different industries, to different geographies. But then I also need to think about male and female, different racial backgrounds. Like, it was important to understand across life experiences how this problem plays out. If only to say, look, I guess it only plays for half or a quarter of them, but at least in my case, I actually realized, like, this is universal. This is like a very, very widespread issue. Um, and the questions I would ask them, I actually they didn't know why I was talking to them, which was the irony of it. I didn't want to cherry pick what the answer should be. If you tell them I'm trying to think of a better banking service, they're gonna, even without wanting to, they will implicitly make connections in the background. Say, okay, how do I connect this to banking for this guy? Like, that's what he's trying to figure out here. So I'd actually go in and ask them, what are the top three problems that keep you up at night when it comes to your business? And if they wouldn't say something related to financial management, banking, money, I just end the interview right there. I just say, like, cool, super helpful, probably not where I need to go with this. And that was based on this idea that if this is not like something that is top of mind, it is probably someone who will not feel the pain that I am trying to solve for. And more importantly, without despite their best intentions, they might get academic about it, thinking, if I had this problem, what would it look like? And that's actually bad data. That would actually send me the wrong way. Um, so it's really about taking as many steps as I could to filter out the wrong people from talking to me. And then when I found the right people, just asking why hundreds of times, thinking of things from different angles. And some people, I even went to their office and I spent the day with them. I went to Boston, I went to New York, I went to DC, and I just spent the day watching. How do you do things? What are you doing? And it just opened my eyes immensely on what was happening in behind the scenes of their business.
From that too, then going from talking to all these different business owners and understanding that you had more of an idea of the problems they had then and taking those insights, at times it can be overwhelming, I imagine, with getting conflicting data in some respects of where to start. How did you decide to prioritize what the initial version of this was going to be? Like, what do you build first?
So I think there were really three um, sources of insight that were driving me. I think the first one was, and the most important one was, what were customers like? What were possible, like, potential customers telling me? And I would, to your point, not everybody knows what they don't have, right? They're trying, like, they're kind of feeling around the problem. They don't really know how to solve it, and that's okay. But I was anchored on the problem sets, not the solutions. To me, that I led with, well, what is the problems that they're talking to me about? And then the solutions came from just my obsessive research into everything that was going on around the world, my own understanding, talking to everybody who would talk to me until they kicked me out of their office to be like, what is possible in this space? Like, what is feasible and what is a dream that will not happen for the next 10 years? Um, and it was triangulating between what I was seeing emerge in other countries, like in Europe or in East Asia, saying, okay, like, this is clearly doable. I see people already using, that particular approach. And then saying, but what is the truly American version of this? What is the one that will, really resonate with American small businesses? And that honestly was every step of the way pulling more customers in along the journey. At the company today, we actually have something called the Voice of Customer team, where every day of the week we are talking to one of our customers and a non-customer, and continually testing hypotheses that are quite important to our product roadmap. And it's that, and then every now and then you kind of call an audible, and you're like, you know what? I Even if everybody's telling us otherwise, I really have a strong gut that we're just going to make this bet and see how it goes. And every now and then you pull one of those, and you do get it wrong, you get it right. But when you get it right, it is really, really powerful. But you just, you try to have the humility to not do that too often.
Yeah. And from that too, then understanding to create a business a lot of times is going to be capital, whether it be your own capital initially, whether it be raising funding
Mhm.
initially. Take me through how the funding side of it went early on. I'm curious as to how you went about that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I started this really on my couch. Like there was nothing around it. And it was really me coming to a point where I had sufficient um detail and understanding and conviction that I said, this is worth me now road testing with others. And to be honest, all the best planning in the world would not have gotten me where I am today. Luck had such an important role to play there. I met our very first investors. It was just the universe brought us together. They were building out their own, VC focused on, fintech. And I come along their way and I'm thinking about this idea. And it was really like this just perfect situation where he said, look, they said, we'll give you our office. You can work out of there. Um, you know, you can access our Rolodex, talk to anybody you need. And what we would ask is that when you come up with this idea, like pitch it to us first. Let's see if we want to invest. And I did, and they did, and we were off to the races. I will say that that was an almost false sense of security because it was the next round, the one where I then had, I had this capital. We had like an emerging team, right? We're talking like four and a half people. One of them was part time. Um, and we had to convince the next band of investors that we had done enough work that there was, the next amount of capital we would take as a company would allow us to launch. And, I'll be honest, that was one of the worst experiences of my life. It was
Yeah.
so difficult. I went, over a year without salary. I paid, we were running out of money. I paid all the company's expenses off credit cards. I had a daughter on the way.
Jesus.
Rent. I was always worried about not being able to pay the rent. Um, and to be honest, like I'd walk to work and I'd have tears streaming down my face because I just didn't know how to let it go. Like you couldn't you couldn't take this terrible feeling out of you and get to the office and you go and pitch investors and say, here's why you got to believe in me. And I'll tell you, like the mental toll it took to come into an office and put your game face on, but not just your game face, right? Just you have to inspire people that their hard-earned capital will be well placed with you. And if you're not feeling like a winner when you do that, they will sense it.
Yeah.
Um, so it was really just coming back, clearing your mind, and coming back to the first principles about why you believe this has to happen. Kind of getting that eye of the tiger feeling in you, and just jumping, and running at this opportunity. And I'll tell you, like when you get rejected four times, and the fifth time of the day is the last one you have to bring the same energy you did with that first call. So it was it was really difficult. I'm not gonna lie, but I think we were really lucky once again. We met an incredible gentleman who had sold, been part of a number of companies that had been quite successful. And he met me and said, I don't actually know much about fintech, but I know about people. And I will invest in you and your team as people because I think you guys have what it takes to do what you'd say you're going to do. And just that one person who took, a little bit of risk and just believed in me enough, we turned that into a $2.5 million raise and gave us this moment of oxygen that we could actually show the world what we were capable of. And then it was, moving through other gates, but that was the one where, I mean, we were down to the wire. Like there was a moment when we had less than $10,000 in our bank account, and payroll was coming up. Like we were at that point. Um, that was definitely not my. I wish I could have planned that. That was very much, a lot of circumstances just going the right way for us.
in that in those moments, I mean, what kept you going? What, was it just like there's no way we're gonna stop yet? I'm just curious because there's a lot of people that will inevitably do the same and not get funding and not know when that point is gonna be. What kept you going through that?
So this is not going to be the most satisfying answer. I don't know where that point was going to be because I will just never let myself get there. Like I will I would rather die on the treadmill than get off. Right? That's just like I am wired like that. I cannot. I cannot think about when I will stop. I will just be like, I will do this until like my body fails me. And um, I think that in my case, that was like it was what allowed us to continue. I think in a very different set of circumstances, that could have been pretty destructive, and I know that. I know that is a double-edged sword. But I thought about it. There were three things that drove me. I think first, I just the very first pitch deck that this company ever had my grandfather on it. It was a picture of him with his toolbox. He was an electrician, and it just came back to this, like, I just remembered my childhood. I loved my grandparents, and I remembered the enormous amount of energy they would spend on this problem, and I'm like, I want to do it for them. I wanna do it for the other grandparents today that will, not be able to necessarily hang out with their grandkids. They're gonna be sitting at a desk trying to make, the ledger match.
Yeah.
I think the second one was my wife, my daughter to be saying like, I want to do this. I want to be able to do this for a legacy for them. And believe me, that's not an easy thing because you're just inches away from it being the opposite of that, right? It's just a destructive thing. And I think the third one was the customers that like these business owners that I was meeting. I knew that they needed something like this. You could tell they were asking. I people who they gave me money. They said, "Here's $20. If you like, I will pay for an account in advance. Can you just like give me one of these when it launches?" And so you have these like spaces of conviction, depending on what part of my life I looked at, that I was just like, I can't let any of these people down. And then, at that point, it was just, can you hold your breath long enough to like withhold the pain? But
Yeah.
I think the one thing I know from my life in so many other places is that I don't mind pain. I mind quitting. I really hate quitting more than I hate suffering, and that served me well here. And I'm sure that later on it will probably be something I have to avoid in some point. But I can't unwire myself.
Well, that's what's fascinating about entrepreneurship, right? It's like this edge of you one way or the other. You could be off the cliff, or you could be soaring high in many respects. It's like it's so difficult to know when that moment is going to be in terms of quitting, in terms of keep continuing on. And you've seen it where other entrepreneurs that may be destructive in some ways. I actually this like in a different way makes me think of like Travis Kalanick at Uber. Like Uber couldn't have existed, I don't think, without a person like Travis Kalanick. At the same time, obviously the destruction in many ways of what he did as well is like the other side of the coin for him. And that's like, it's such a
Yeah.
crazy thing to see amongst entrepreneurs, but you do have to have some level of that drive, conviction, et cetera, to make it happen in terms of creating a company, especially in, industry. I read, doing some research, like, people like Mokti were like, there's no way this is going to happen after going through the investment side and getting so many no's from people. It's like, how else would you keep going without having some crazy conviction around your idea, which is fascinating to kind of hear people as they talk about it. And one of the things I'm thinking about too is, so you raise funding and you raised $2.5 million, which is obviously super helpful to help the business. Take me through the customer acquisition side. How are you getting people on your platform? How are you getting people as customers for your business?
Are you talking about in the early days?
Yeah.
So, any way we could. Um, so, the thing that's unique about fintech, and especially like this challenger banking, this neo banking space, is that there's so much you got to do before you can actually launch, right? You got to find um, a lot of partners that behind the scenes provide many of the financial services that you can, weave together and deliver to your clients. Like, you don't start by being the bank. You start by actually building on top of many financial service providers, including a banking partner. Um, to get to there, I mean, you have to have built the technology, you have to have gone through diligence and compliance checks. Like, there's so many hoops to go to. It's not like you know, a, an elegant photo app that you can build over a few months, launch it, and then see what happens. There's just so many different gates. So until then, we had to find anybody that we could who would want an account. Right, to us, it
Yeah.
was building up a wait list or a community, we used to call it, of people who want better banking. And in the early days, honestly, that was just me going to, you know, um, chambers of commerce of towns and cities and doing presentations there on something I could offer of value, and just tell them at the beginning, like, look, if if you're interested in this thing, which is, a bank account that could do X, Y, and Z for your business, I'd love if you would just, sign up for our waitlist here. I'm going to now give you an hour-long lecture on, um, strategy and decision making, or e-commerce, running an e-commerce business, whatever it could be that us on our team could provide of value. And we collect, our first, I think, 1,000 businesses that actually agreed to sign up came out of, these little things. And then we had to find ways to scale them. We realized, okay, well, there's only so many hours in a week we can do these kind of events, and they take a huge toll on our ability to get work done. Where can we start doing this? So at one point, we started saying, well, what are other sources of value that we can provide businesses, where first we can socialize our name, have them know who we are, but more importantly, philosophically, give them something of value before we ever ask for something in return. And so I think we incorporated 500 businesses for free as a way of saying, look, let's help you on your journey. Later down the line, we're going to be able to help you from a bank account. Let's incorporate your business for you. And we did that, and we got these companies into existence, and many of them are our customers today. The other one we did is we talked to these, small business owners, and found that the first moment many small business owners realize that they are a business owner is when they issue their first invoice. They were like, "Oh, I am now a business." Um, and we looked at the App Store and realized that there wasn't a ton of invoicing apps out there that were really beautiful, and free. A lot of stuff had ads, or you had to pay a lot for it. And so we built, um, an invoice app that was extremely simple, really beautiful, did what it had to do, and made it free. And said, look, here's another way we can provide value. And that thing grew like gangbusters. I mean, it is now the second or third most downloaded invoicing app in America, called Invoice Maker.
Jeez.
And those are two examples of, I'd say, probably a few dozen of these kind of experiments we ran to say, like, what'll work, and the only thing that the organizing principle that ties any of them together was simply saying, what is a way where we can demonstrate that we want to provide value, and have given something before we ever ask for it in return, whether it's a product, whether it's a 1 hour session on something, it doesn't really matter. We wanted to make clear that that was our philosophy, and it served us well. People recognized that we had done them a solid, and then sometimes even years later, but months later, we'd come back and say, hey, we've launched, would you consider trying this out? We had a very strong conversion of people from that wait list to account holders.
That's amazing. And one thing that, just to go back on, because I think it's important and for people starting businesses as well, you mentioned you didn't take a salary for the first year or so, and you obviously took time to fundraise. In the meantime, though, how did you convince people to join your team and to really help you build this company in the early days? Because that's a problem every startup is going to face early on. How did you convince people to join your squad?
So, um, everyone had their unique case, right? For
Yeah.
one of the folks, who's on the development side, I said, look, I'm going to get you a job somewhere else, and then when I have the money, I'm going to ask you to quit that job to come work for me. And so I literally moved mountains, got him a job, working in another tech company, where he would have, an income. We could work together on weekends, work together in evenings. And then when I was finally able to put the capital together, I said, all right, this is the moment where we're going for it. And he gave us 2 weeks and came to work. I mean, that was one way I solved it. And the other one was, um, you know, I had raised this small bit of capital from our first investors, and I put it to everybody else's salaries. I said, like, this is how I can build this emerging team. And I think when I got the first signals that we probably, were going to need a lot more time to get a full round closed, the small salary that I was taking just to make ends meet, I quickly stopped taking that. And that, what I thought was going to be maybe 3-4 months, turned into closer to a year.
That's wild. I think it's so crazy to think about how hiring in the early days, what it can be. But there are many stories that are kind of like that. There's like an ad hoc way. You're just trying to figure out how I can get help for this thing and grow it in the early days until you either get funding or obviously have revenue and profit so you can pay people that way. But it's such a journey on the people side. It's like having that convincing story and understanding like where you're going, be able to sell that. I mean, that's the role of a founder CEO, especially. It's you are trying to convince people, whether you're selling your business, whether you're fundraising, whether you're selling other people on what you're doing. Like that's the name of the game. And I want to go through then going from those early days, obviously, and kind of doing a lot of things that don't scale. And I'm sure this may be some of those today too, but you've raised a pretty sizable Series A not long ago, led by Battery Ventures. Take me through then from that point, like at that point when you raised that Series A, where was the company at raising Series A, and what was kind of the idea moving forward from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of important insights, were gained along the way. The first one was that it was, as we were going through these rounds, the painful ones, the less painful ones, I actually started realizing just how important it was to be talking to the right people when it came to investment.
Yeah.
At the beginning stages, I had no idea. Like, I genuinely didn't know how to differentiate between investors. And then I started, pattern recognition emerges like, this is not the right stage for this one. They
Yeah.
don't know enough about the sector. You'd have someone looking at banking and they're using all of this pattern matching from the world of e-commerce. And you're like, it's never going to work because they keep on having these other rules of thumb that they're trying to use to assess us. So it was about having a much better understanding of who are the relevant people that we really should be talking to, because that would just increase the chance that we would hit more, holes in ones with these conversations rather
Yeah.
than, just send them right into a sand trap. Um, but the other one was actually getting really smart about what do the goalposts look like at different rounds, right? Like I really needed to get the exam sheet before I went to write the exam. And I don't think I had that going in. Went going in saying like, can I raise around? And I hoped that what I had put together was enough to convince people based on, I guess, first principle logic, saying this should be enough to convince people. But clearly that was not the case for a lot of folks. Um, Later on, I became a lot more scientific about understanding what are the criteria for raising a Series A? What are the criteria for the rounds after that? How do I make sure that the people that I'm raising the Series A from know that I've already thought about the B and the C and the D round, and that I have that in mind, because I need to give them conviction that they're going to invest in this one round, but immediately our focus starts on the next one.
Yeah.
And so I had to make sure that they had that sense of confidence. This person isn't just a guy raising a round. He has the view on how he'll make the next three or four happen. Um, that was actually like a really smart piece that someone helped me understand. Like this is, certainly not me being brilliant. This is me talking to everybody I could to get smart about the space as quickly as possible. Um, and that to me is everything. I mean, getting kicked out of people's offices, just not stopping so I could really feel like I knew what the next 3, 6, 9 months would look like, and even beyond that. And I think the last one was building, I'd say, with overwhelming data, an investment case.
Yeah.
We did. I had such PTSD from that earlier experience. I said like I don't want to like slide in by a hair.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it is so obvious that this is like a slam dunk, that we are, in good standing. Now, obviously, you can will that only to a certain extent. You actually have to be able to deliver on it. But that was, I guess, the way that we set the goalpost for the team and made sure that we could go to market with, a strong confidence that this would be the right metrics people would be looking for, that we had over delivered on them. And the places where, we weren't at that level yet, we had a really good story as to why that was okay, and why it was still an incredible investment nonetheless. And then, yeah, and then it was just, deploying that. And I guess, it worked for us um, quite well. And I would say that it's a two-person dance, right?
Yeah.
You have to find the investors who have that belief. This is not just a numbers game. They have to have the emotional belief. They have to believe in the person too. And so you have to find people that, and we did, and I'm so fortunate that we did, where they're good people. They're people that you want to be around because they're investing in the people at that point. They're not totally investing in like, a company with years of data and it doesn't really matter who's sitting, in different roles. That was so important that we found like-minded people. And I think it's made all the difference, to be honest.
Just curious, how long did that Series A take you to raise?
So that one was I almost in disbelief, it was the opposite of the last one. The last one had taken, over a year.
Yeah.
This one had probably taken us, um, maybe a month and a half,
Yeah. That's
uh,
a little
from
different.
start to finish. And I didn't actually believe it was true. Like, I remember, like, my co-founder would say, like, "Hey, Ethan, it's like, it's working." I'm like, "I don't know, like, something's gonna happen." Like, I don't I don't believe it until, like, literally the money is in the bank account, we've signed all the papers, then I will let go.
Yeah.
And, it works.
It's funny you mentioned that. I feel the same way with any other like business things I've done where like you have something in the works, but until it's closed, until it's literally like the money's in your account, like it's not real. It's just not real. It's just something that's, oh, okay, well, this is moving forward, but it's not real. I think you learn that as you move forward and like kind of continue on in business. Did raise that round and
Mhm.
take me through then from there, and then COVID hitting. How has that
Yeah.
affected you guys?
Look, this was, I mean, it was the most, incredible moment for our company. We didn't even know, about COVID, right? Like, no one was thinking about this yet, but
Yeah,
we were also so lucky because I'd say about 72 hours after the wires hit the bank, our all the markets were shutting down because, like, the whole world was going into work from home, shelter in place. And I couldn't think of a more, just just by a hair timing on this one. I often felt like I was like that Indiana Jones scene where he, like, slides under the door that's, like, smashing down and grabs his hat.
yeah.
A week more time and who knows what could have happened. Um, and so the part of it was we really wanted to be, um, especially on the capital strategy, aggressive in the best possible way. Like, not aggressive in a angry way, aggressive in, I am impatient to get this done. Like, we are in a rush to build the greatest business banking experience for small businesses. Like, speed is of the essence. And that served us well because there were a lot of advisors who said, no, you guys should wait another 6 months, you'll have more data, etc. And I just said, like, like, I want to move quickly. I want to have, a strong hand to play so that we can lean into product, we can lean into our customers, and we can do more and earlier. And it was a good philosophy just because the way that the world turned, it allowed us to be prepared for COVID in a unique moment where we had, a lot of capital walking into one of the most uncertain times I think I've ever been through.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into COVID with our new investors, right? And kudos to them. They didn't even flinch. They said, we believe in this business, we believe in this team. It doesn't matter what the world throws at us. Like, we believe. And I was so grateful to have that level of conviction. But I will never forget, like, our first board meeting in COVID. I said, like, hey, I don't know if there's even like 1,000 businesses this quarter that would want to sign up for a new bank account. Like, everybody was worried that this was like the end of millions. It was the end of millions and millions of businesses.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately.
the other thing that happened at the same time, and this is the broader story for COVID for us, was that someone switched the, like, gas in our car for jet fuel, where there were just tens of thousands of businesses across America who were starting to realize, hey, I can't get my banking done anymore. Like, I will not go into a branch or the branch is closed. I can't even call because their call centers are closed. I need something that is available from my basement, which is where my business now is, and that will reduce the overhead to get things done. Whereas lots of the incumbent banks that people were using were increasing overhead, longer wait times, more faxes to send, things were crashing more often. And so we just saw this massive shift of, 20, 30-year-old businesses sometimes across America saying, like, I need what you're offering. And I think part of our thesis always was to say, this is not a low cost play. We're not trying to give you a bargain, basement, like, the cheapest possible experience there is. We actually have a paid product, right? Customers pay us $10 a month, as a subscription fee for, our services. Now, it's an unlimited version, right? It's like a Netflix for banking.
Yeah.
But if you do pay money, you expect something in return. Like, it's not just a thing you'll do happily. And so the the exchange we promise them is that this is actually, a value play. This is about, you will see value in this. That's why we've invested heavily so that you can send wires from our app, and our web experience. There are cash deposit locations across the country. You're able to pay bills directly. You can have checks remotely printed and mailed on your behalf. All of these things where if you were truly trying to do the most, skeletal version of banking, you probably wouldn't include those. You probably say, like, I mean, who needs wires nowadays? Well, the truth is that a lot of businesses do. And even if they don't use them regularly, they want to have the security that if someone asks me to wire them something, I should be able to do it with my bank account. It's a gating factor. And we wanted to make sure that they saw the same guard posts that they saw in their classic banking experiences, but now all of a sudden it was made in an elegant and authentic, a friendly way, but really an inspiring way that could be done from wherever they were working, and it would work flawlessly for them. And that, I think, was what allowed a lot of these larger businesses to come to us and say, "I think I found my new home." And we talk to them regularly, and we always ask, like, "What do are we your primary bank account? What do we need to do to make sure we stay that way?" And that relationship with these new businesses has been brought out of a very dark situation. But I mean, I've made personal friends. Like, I've talked to our clients dozens of times, and we're talking about their kids and their families just because I need to find out about their lives. Because I know that for every one of them, there's 10,000 others out there that I don't know yet that we're going to find soon enough.
With that too, at this point, you have like 170,000 businesses across North America working with you guys. How did you decide? I mean, obviously, that there's a very compelling reason that they're with you. On the business model side of things, you mentioned the $10 a month thing. How did you come up with that and understand what that was going to be, what that was going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, it was something almost philosophical, where I remember from my earliest days, my family saying, "Look, I would never ask my lawyer to do free work on the regular because it is such an important service for our business.
Yeah,
Our bank account is one of the most important partners and service providers we have. Of course, we're going to pay for the right accounts. Like, it's a no-brainer."
yeah,
And when it came to these, like, customers, we wanted to revalidate that question. So we interview all these hundreds of customers and ask them about pricing. And they said, "Look, if you can get this right, I will pay you 10 times what I'm paying today. Like, I don't even care about the amount of money, just make the pain go away."
yeah,
And it's funny because that actually forced us into a really odd situation. Early on, everybody was telling me, make this free, like, give away the product. You'll figure out ways to make money later. And apart from it having, like, a weird business logic for us, um, it actually just really couldn't reconcile with what I was hearing from all of these business owners saying, like, "I will pay you money if you can do this the right way." And so I said, "You know what? Like, I will happily be contrarian here. I will disagree." And we went and made it a priced model. And, to that effect, it's actually been perfectly fine. Businesses that have a real business to bank with will happily pay that money because they know, by the way, that the average business in America is paying $500 to $750 a year in fees.
yeah.
And here we are saying, get everything you need for $10 a month. But the other thing that they're really happy about is that they know what they're paying for. They're not worried about, are you going to advertise? Like, am I the product? It's like a Facebook situation where the thing is free, but you figure out something else. Like, no, it's straight up. This is the money that we make from you, and you know what you're getting in return. And I think they like that exchange. Um, and I think the broader piece for them is this idea where you don't actually have to think about it. You know it's going to be $10. It's not like little ones and twos of 75 cents here and a buck 50 there. The clarity of it has been so helpful for them to say, "Yeah, I get it. It's going to be $120 for banking this year." And that's been a great exchange for us.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of it. And I think to me, I love hearing about the different business models behind companies and how the founders think through that because there's so many ways you can go with it. And that really dictates where your business is going to go. And the relationship you have with the customers matters as well. And obviously, many of the Silicon Valley people would think about you'll figure out revenue later, just growth and just get users. But if all of your customers are telling you, "Hey, yeah, we would definitely pay you for this," and they do, then it's like, well, okay, might as well use that method and be a little contrarian in that way as well. With that as well, though,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it allowed us to also do a few other really special things. When COVID hit, we saw what was happening to our customers. Like we were speaking to them,
Yeah.
and actually waived our fees for 3 months for all of our customers in badly hit states or industries. And that was something that we didn't even business case this. Wasn't like, is there a good return on that? This was like the right thing to do morally.
Yeah.
And I was so fortunate that we were able to just take this worry off their plate and let's say, look, you don't worry about this. We got you. You just make sure your business is okay and your family's okay. We'll figure this out later. And what's so nice about that is that the people who got free banking, they're still with us now that they're paying again. They almost 100% of those folks came back and said, like, I am happy to be a customer here because you really did the right thing. And to be clear, like many of the other banks out there, they weren't doing anything about their fees. Some were, but the vast majority said, like, yeah, you're still paying like you always have, even though essentially all businesses had shut down.
Right. Which is kind of insane to think about that. I mean, like, yeah, what a wild time it's been. What a year it's been, 2020. And one of the last things I'm wondering about, because I read this, I think on your website somewhere around your favorite book being Chasing Daylight. Tell me about the book. Why is it your favorite book?
Yeah. So this was a book that one of my teachers gave to me like years ago. And I think I've read it maybe a dozen times at this point. It's a sad story. It's the story of the CEO of KPMG, one of the largest accounting firms in the world. And he finds out that he has terminal brain cancer and has like only a few months to live. And it is the journal or the diary of those remaining months he had. And what was so fascinating to me about this and so inspiring was that he kind of used the same skill set that made him a good CEO to make the best of those months left. He brought a very structured and kind of principled approach to how he would spend his time and how he did that. Now, you might differ with how he prioritized things, but I thought that was so inspiring. And more than anything, it just made me always remember, like, time is so fleeting, right? Like it's
Yeah.
your family, friends, relationships. This is all about people at the end of the day, and it could all go away so quickly. So it just gives me this I guess this jolt of electricity to never forget all these other things in life because I really do get immersed in my work, um, and that work has to be meaningful, but it can't be at the cost of all these other really important things that I as a human being need in my life and will always need.
Eytan, where can people go to learn more about your company and connect with you as well?
www.northone.com is the best place to find out about NorthOne. And look, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to folks at our company, and we always can connect me to people who are interested in talking. It's always a pleasure to meet people who are curious about what we're doing. I mean, there's no greater, I guess, compliment than someone who's saying like, "Tell me more," right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course we will. We work so hard for this that it is our pleasure to tell people more, and in some cases to make them customers and to show them what we've been working so hard on.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Just Go Grind. If you want to follow along on the socials for all things Just Go Grind and with me as well, you can find Just Go Grind on Instagram and Twitter at Just Go Grind. You can find me on Twitter at JustinGordon212. Find me on Instagram, JustinGordon8. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.